So Jesus probably had the best smelling hair when he was murdered, because there was a lady who took a alabaster jar full of perfume or oil and put it all over Jesus's head. And when she did it, the students, the disciples, are like, "You could have used all that to help the poor." And Jesus got onto them and said, um, she's doing it. Well, I don't know what he said. It was something like it's an honor. I guess I could look it up. While Jesus was in Bethany in the home of Simon the Leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar and a jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. "Why this waste?" they asked. "This perfume could have been sold at a high price and the money given to the poor." Aware of this, Jesus said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you will not always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." And so, yeah, Jesus had the best smelling hair that's ever been had on the cross. But, you could make a joke out of it, but if you try to put yourself in the shoes of Jesus, I could imagine that amid the pain and the suffering, that there would be this smell, this reminder of the kindness of this lady, and that would be very meaningful in that time of great pain. Some small thing like a smell. So I wanted to share that. Another thing, Jesus taught, in the translation it says, "Don't worry," and I think that translation could be better. So in the Sermon on the Mount, what would it be? It would be Matthew 6, and then there would be a worry. "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink." And so I'm reading the New International Version. I think there's a better translation. So English Standard Version. And it says, "Therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life." And so, I had to change my rotors on my back left recently because I didn't change the brake pads. So there's a level of worry. And when I'm doing something new that's dangerous, there's a level of anxiety and stress that keeps me alert. And so I don't think Jesus, if we interpret things in a way in which Jesus just doesn't make sense, there's a chance that the translation is wrong. And so it makes more sense that Jesus is talking about something like the kind of anxiety and stress which people can experience, and it is not good. And so you have to consider that, because later on Jesus talks about how when he separates the goat and the sheep, he will say, "Well, I was hungry and you did not feed me." And so Jesus, on the one hand, in Matthew 6, Jesus is trying to make sure that we don't have too much anxiety. But it's not saying that we should not have any kinds of anxiety, any kinds of stress, because we will. Let's say that we are able to know God, to be in the kingdom, and let's say that we do that first, and then all of these things are taken care of. We also will need to make sure that we're sharing what we're given. And so it's a little bit more complicated. And similarly, you've heard Jordan Peterson talk about Matthew 5:5. "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And Jordan Peterson wants to say that the meek is someone who knows how to use a sword but keeps the sword sheathed. And it occurred to me that Jesus could have called down legions of angels. Jesus could have taken over the world by force with the help of the angels. And he asked God the Father, take this cup from me. He asked 3 times. Jesus did not want to go through that pain and suffering. But that's not what God the Father would have. And so he was able to force his enemies. He had the strength and the power to force his enemies into submission. And I even think that Judas was probably hoping to, push Jesus in the right direction and say, I've seen all these miracles, but you just need a push in the right direction so that you will become the Messiah that we have all learned to expect, the Messiah who will use force and violence to just take over the whole world. And so I imagine that he turned Jesus in because he was just trying to help the story go the way he thought it should go instead of the way Jesus and God the Father would have it go. And that's what we do. That's what Satan does, is that we think we know better. And so I can see Judas doing that. That would be the reason, a good reason why Judas would have behaved the way he did. And so, there's nothing wrong with learning how to fight and to be a warrior, but you have to be willing and able to pray to God, to ask if you need to keep your sword sheathed. And it reminds me of, what reward do you have if you love the people who love you? Because that's easy. A lot of these things require effort. And so if you are a weakling who can't fight, maybe like myself, then turning the other cheek is, what other choice do you have? But if you do know how to fight, if you do know how to use your sword, and you turn the other cheek, it's a whole different level. It's a whole different level of effort. It's more like loving your enemy, because being a weak man who turns the other cheek is totally different than being a strong man who turns the other cheek. So I think it's cool if people learn to be strong and learn how to fight, but it's even cooler if you pray to God and ask if you should keep your sword sheathed, and to be able to use the sword and also be willing to serve the Father and not use it. And that, because that's what Jesus did. Jesus was willing and able to use the angels, to the legion of angels, but he first asked the Father. And he asked the Father 3 times. The Father told him no 3 times. So yeah, that's what's been on my mind, and I just wanted to share what I've been thinking about. So I hope you'll have a good day. Have a good one. Bye bye.